There once was a boy in 2nd century AD who was angry all the time. He wanted to find a religion to help him. He started with Buddhism. It was known as the Path of Enlightenment. He had to travel to India, but he wasn't into meditation. Christianity was next. It was based on the teachings of Jesus and the Bible, but he didn't know how to read. He tried Judaism. It was very similar to Christianity, but he just didn't fit in. He started to get more angry. He couldn't find anything to help him. Confucianism was next on his list. It was all about kindness and virtues. It was more of a philosophy than a religion. He passed through many bureaucracies on the way. Most places had no election. He liked Hinduism for their ideas on reincarnation and that all other religions are true, but their paintings with the 8 arms scared him. Islam was the last religion. He decided to look farther into it this time. People told him stories on the founder, Muhammad. He prayed with many Muslim followers. He had someone read the religious book, the Quran, to him. He watched how people made the Hajj to the city of Mecca. He was taught the framework of Muslim life known as the 5 pillars. He learned their first system of government known as caliphate. He was told there were non-believers and the struggle with them was the jihad. Sunni is one branch of Islam. Shiite is the other. He learned of the many Mughals that used to run the country. He moved in with a Muslim family and met the sheikh that was the head of the household. He didn't really like any of the vizier officials in the government. Seemed like every person around him was Arab, but they all accepted. His Muslim family's land was being taken over by the European Crusades. He knew most of the Crusaders. He even thought one was his cousin. He had to get out of there. He ran past the Sultan's palace. He was the ruler of the country. Most of the Europeans believed in Christianity. There were different forms of Christianity. One is Eastern Orthodox. He didn't want to live with the Crusades or the Sultan. He wanted to be free in a democracy. None of the religions he had tried were right for him. Not Hinduism, not Judaism, not Buddhism, not Confucianism. Everywhere he went, something went wrong. He didn't like the idea of polytheism, the belief that there is more than one God. He liked to believe that there is just one, which is monotheism. He didn't want to go to China. He thought their idea of the mandate of heaven, the power for the right to rule was given from a divine source, was a little ridiculous. But he wanted to get out of the bureaucracy and move to a republic so when he was old enough he could vote. He had already been to India to study Buddhism, and he was at the bottom of the caste system there and everywhere else. He wanted to enjoy his time before he left, so he seen the Indus and Ganges rivers. He had to travel through the Himalayas. He seen a strange figure in the fog. It was Confucius, the founder of Confucianism. They talked about many things, including Muhammad and Jesus and how all religions were connected. He taught him about respecting his parents and ancestors, known as filial piety, and how that might help him in his journey. Confucius told him to follow the pastoral nomads because they were heading on their way to Greece. Greece was in the boundaries of the Roman Empire. He specifically needed to get to Athens. He told him no matter what time he got there, night or day, there would be a boat there waiting for him on the Mediterranean Sea on its way to Rome. The nomads told him of Diocletian and Alexander the Great and how they were well-known rulers in the Roman Empire. They spoke of how people thought they were barbarians because they didn't belong to any community. He was scared that he wouldn't even fit into where he was going because he was so familiar with the Sanskrit language from India. There was even a woman on the journey. She was related to Shi Huangdi, the ruler of the short-lived Qin dynasty. One nomad stopped to pray to Buddha every day. The nomad tried to get everyone to pray with him. He got irritated. He thought he was overusing God's law. He could tell when they entered Athens. There was crowds of people everywhere. Someone pointed out the General Pericles to him. He had 2 gold coins in his pocket. He used them to buy a book on Greek history, language, and culture, and a loaf of bread. Him and a few other people got on the boat. The journey seemed like forever. He read the Helleniste book while he was on the boat. They passed Sparta as he taught himself how to read. The trip to Rome seemed like forever. There was groups of plebeians everywhere. He was a commoner too, though. Almost as soon as he got off the boat, a man named Plato handed him some food. He told him he was an Arian, part of the master race, and he should consult Caesar on whether he could become a patrician, also known as a nobleman. He met another philosopher, Socrates, and he told him to just wait and be patient, and what he wants will come to him. So he did what he said, and he waited, and nothing happened, and he finally passed away. But he got reincarnated as Constantine, the founder of Constantinople. The Roman Empire was now the Byzantine Empire. An empire is a civilization controlled by an emperor or a monarch, and that's just what Constantine did. He controlled the civilization. Far down in Constantinople's line, there was a lord. He was highly ranked, but not as high as a king. He had a few knights for his protection. They were like soldiers that lived on his land. He was also great friends with all the high officials in churches, including a monk, a bishop, a priest, and the Pope. His family was very wealthy and had many vassals for just being a lord. He was very popular with the bourgeoisie and the middle class. However, the peasants and serfs hated him because they knew how many vassals he had and how freely he spent his money. But that was how feudalism went. The peasants were below the knights, and the knights were below the church, and the church was below the king. He could read and write Latin. He had a manor and a fief where his vassals and knights lived and worked. His hometown was Rome, but he moved to Greece when he was just 15. He went to the Roman Catholic Church every day, and he opposed everyone who was Eastern Orthodox or Jewish, meaning he was anti-Semitic. He owned a guild where his craftsmen made longbows. He didn't like the 100 Years' War because it was between the King of England and France, and no matter who won, he wouldn't be in power. He did like the Crusades, though. More land was good for anyone. He approved every canon law the church made and supported their legal system. One night, infidels, which had no religion, invaded his manor. His knights protected him, but they couldn't protect him from the plague. He had got Black Death from the tiny rat they had brought in. The Lord was high in the centralized government, and without him, things would change. Soon, people could own their own businesses with capitalism, and the Middle Ages came to an end. Soon the Renaissance began, and so did the Reformation to break away from the Catholic Church. The 95 Theses was the first push for the Reformation. It was written by Martin Luther in his own vernacular, which is his first language. The Roman Catholic Church reacted quickly with their own counter-reformation. The Pope was of the Catholic Church, and he lived in the city-state of the Vatican City. Explorations were common in this time. Everyone wanted to search for new land and build colonies. There was one young nobleman who wanted to travel to the Americas to find something new. He wanted to get away from any absolutism, even the dictators who said they followed the philosophy of enlightenment, and he knew a few aristocrats who would fund his trip. There wasn't many constitutions stating the law. The Protestant religion had spread all around Europe with cultural diffusion, and France had granted tolerance to it with the Edict of Nantes. The explorer had to wait till the Council of Trent was over. They decided to excommunicate or banish a man whose brother was humanist, just because he thought human life was more important than supernatural beliefs. He thought as long as you had salvation and made up for your indulgences or your sin, that you should be allowed in the church. He always celebrated the 7 sacraments or the 7 points of Christianity. He didn't know if he was going to make it into his ship on time. He had to watch the council meeting, and he accidentally bumped into the king on the way. He started yelling something about his divine right from God. He had many different men with many different religions on his boat. Good thing the Peace of Augsburg was just passed. He had a printing press and a top-notch boat, thanks to the scientific revolution. A group of holy men known as the Jesuits had told him about predestination, that God had already planned out everything that was supposed to happen. And recently the government was said to intervene as little as possible, known as laissez-faire. A few months into their journey, they seen conquistadors. They thought it was part of the 30 Years' War, but they soon realized it was part of the Spanish Armada. The Spanish conquerors were attacking England. It had been months and months, but they finally made it to one of the colonies. The social contract theory was effective in the colonies too. The government and the citizens had the power. People said there was not only colonies in the Americas, but in Africa too. It was like a whole empire, but the monarch was over in Europe. People also talked of exploring Asia. People also brought over slaves from the African slave coast. People also told the explorer of triangular trade, which involved the 3 countries of Europe, Britain, and America. Everyone in the colonies believed in mercantilism, the theory that trade guarantees wealth. There was many different races, including Mestizo, the mixed race of Spanish and Native American. There was also mulatto, which was a mix of black and white. The explorer was told of huge farms called plantations in the south. The Americas had many raw materials that no one had ever seen before. The explorer found that the majority of the slaves were brought from the Ivory Coast. He was told of the Gold Coast in West Africa that was known for its many raw materials. The Columbian Exchange was well known for its exchange of slaves, plants, animals, and culture. The Treaty of Tordesillas made it so Portugal got lands east of Brazil and Spain got lands west of Brazil.